Okay, so can everybody hear me okay today? It looks like. If you can, just let me know. If you get a chance in the chat box, if you could let me know, just put your name and your county in the chat box so that way I've got a record of who's on today. But welcome to our fourth session of the 4-H orientation sessions. Today we're going to talk mostly about or some volunteer resources. And so I probably won't get a lot of time to do I probably won't have any time to do the 4-H opportunities, but I will work on that, or we'll have that in another session. But I'm going to start. So what I'm going to talk about today is, okay, Sharon, not a problem if you have to leave. It is being recorded, and I'll send it out like I always do each week. But thank you for coming on. But I do want to share some resources. So I'm not going to talk about how you go about screening the volunteers as far as the application and all of those pieces. That you will get, you need to talk to either Paul or Stephanie, depending on what area you live in. But I want to give you some resources in volunteer management. I think it's really important that we talk about this. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. And go ahead and talk about the volunteer resources. So to start, I'm just going to talk a little bit about volunteers in general. You know, we know that volunteering has always been a really important part of our country. But when we think about our traditional volunteer, we think about, or what most people think of as our traditional volunteers. It's a middle-aged white female, middle to high income, married with children, and they do not work outside of the home. What we know about today's volunteers is they do work full-time. We have a lot of male and female volunteers. We have white and non-white volunteers. They're single or married. They're any income level. The big thing that we're finding now with our volunteers is they have minimal free time. So we have to think about that. And then our volunteers are carefully evaluating volunteer assignments before they commit to what they want. So that's why it's really critical that we talk about volunteer management and how to do that. We also know that African Americans volunteer in greater numbers than ever before. The minority groups are asked to volunteer less. We tend to ask the minority groups less to volunteer, but they will volunteer at a higher rate than the average population. And the majority of our volunteers, again, are working people, and we're also finding that single people are showing significant increases in their volunteering. I know that we find that a lot in our college students, and then those individuals that may have just graduated from college and are looking for some practical experience, but maybe they can't get it in it. Maybe they can't get a job. We're also finding that volunteers give more money to charity than non-volunteers. So when you're looking at donors or donations, people that volunteer with your organization are going to tend to give more money than those that don't volunteer, maybe than just our alumni. Also, 25% of all volunteers, or about 25.2 million people, this is nationwide, this isn't just Extension or 4-H, this is all volunteers, but they do tend to volunteer 5 or more hours per week. And religious people who attend religious services are more generous with their volunteer time. And this all comes from a Gallup organization, or Gallup poll. So extension organizations or extension volunteers, those that volunteer within cooperative extension, we know that they are the lifeblood to our organization, not only to just 4-H, but to extension in general. You know, we have a huge Master Gardener program, our Living with Fire, all of those programs rely on volunteers. The thing that we need to remember is, this is one thing I want to stress to everybody. It says you cannot replace a volunteer, and you cannot replace a volunteer position. You can always replace a volunteer individual, the person themselves, but not the position. So one out of every 80 Americans has served in some kind of volunteer capacity with cooperative extension. That's about 2.9 million people. And volunteers invest about 51 days every year, every day on extension. Volunteers invest 51 days for every day an extension professional invests in working with volunteers. So for every day that you do training with volunteers or you work with them on a basis, they tend to give back about 51 days. If you looked at the dollar amount, the volunteer hours, and there is a calculation through the independent sector that does qualify or does tell you what the hourly rate of volunteer service equates to. I'm not sure what Nevada's is. Nationally, it was running about $22 an hour is what you would typically pay for what volunteers give to an organization. And what that computes to with all of the volunteers nationally, it's about 5 times the entire extension budget. And if you looked at what people would pay in communities, they would pay about $4.5 billion for the same services that that volunteers give back to our organization. So why do people volunteer? Well, they volunteer for a variety of reasons, and it also depends on what program they're volunteering with. But typically, when you ask somebody why they're volunteering, number one, they want to belong to an organization. I know that's one of the things. Like when we move to a new community, or somebody moves to a new community, they look for a volunteer opportunity to get to know people and have that sense of belonging in their community. They also want to give back to the organization. They want to give to that organization. That's a lot of times we see with our 4-H volunteers. They want to give back to the organization that gave them so much. Some individuals do want to complete an education. Many high schools around the country are requiring that by the time you graduate from high school, you have to volunteer 40 hours within your community. And colleges are doing the same thing. You know, you have to do so many volunteer hours in order to get credit to graduate. We do have those volunteers that want that recognition. I think that it's really important that we remember that there are some that want public recognition for that. They're also volunteering to maybe receive training. There are some in 4-H that want to receive the training, but you've got to, but that is one reason. They want to gain new skills. Again, another example of why people volunteer. They want to be on a team. They want to have fun. I mean, isn't that why all of us volunteer and all of us show up to our job every day? They also want to be a part of problem solving. I know when I am involved in an organization, and I find this true especially with my son, in his youth program, in youth programs. One of the things that I find, I will volunteer if I'm going to complain about how something is working, how organization is working. I tend to also believe that if I'm going to complain, then I need to be part of the solution. So part of the problem solving of how can we make this a better organization. They want to test out career possibilities. This is another big one, especially in youth programs. If somebody thinks that maybe they want to work with youth, then they will volunteer. They want to gain work experience. They want to make friends, use their skills that they have, develop leadership. And the number one reason why people volunteer is because they were asked. I will give an example of that. One of the things, so my husband, and this is especially true if you look at the Gen Xers, so kind of my age group, we don't tend to volunteer, and it's also with the minority groups. They're finding they tend to not volunteer until they're asked. My husband is a perfect example of this. He loves to help coach and he loves to work with kids, but he will not be one to just step up and volunteer to do something. You have to ask him. Last year we moved to town. You know, Cody was playing football. My husband went to practice every day. And finally one day they were like, hey, can you come help? You know, they were short 2 or 3 coaches, and they're like, can you come help? Just hold this back. We can't have you do too much more because you're not a certified volunteer. It's the same with any organization. But, you know, can you hold the bag so the kids can practice this tackling? Well, then, you know, more and more and more they started asking him. And finally they're like, hey, can you just sign up to be a coach and help? Well, now he does that. He's not going to step up and say, hey, sign me up to be a coach. I want to do this. And so he's one of those that you need to ask him in order to volunteer. And we're finding that more and more. All right, so when we think about 4-H volunteers, there are kind of some underlying philosophies, and I want to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to share with you the national framework for 4-H volunteerism, these documents come from, or this talks about that, but as I'm going through all of these kind of models or ideas about volunteer management and volunteer development, there is some underlying issues that I want to share. Number one, 4-H relies on and thrives on the strong ethics of volunteerism. You know we couldn't do our job without our volunteers. A quality youth development program occurs in 4-H because of our partnerships. We have strong partnerships with our dedicated and caring volunteers. There's also, it's also important that we have a comprehensive volunteer system that includes both the management and the volunteer resources and the development of those individuals who are volunteering with our organization. The active participation, training, and involvement of volunteers will enhance the credibility and also the integrity of our 4-H program. That's, I know that, sorry, I've got to shift a little bit, sorry. You know, we haven't done a lot of volunteer training on the state level. I know, well, we haven't done any since I've been on board, but you know, that's something that we would, you know, I would like to move to, but I'm hoping at the county level, you're doing some training with your volunteers. A lot of states and a lot of counties across the country have moved to a system where volunteers every year have to have so many hours of training. So it might be 5 hours of training, it might be, you know, 4 hours, something. And I think that that's okay. And then it just, excuse me, I've got the hiccups now. It just depends on the training, what kind of training. Some counties and states will accept other organizations' trainings. It's also, there's an express commitment to the involvement of youth and adult volunteers as partners. So I think it's really important that we remember that our youth and our adults need to be partners in our organization and then planning. That there's recognition that volunteering is a two-way process, you know, that it's benefiting both the volunteer and it's also benefiting our program. We also need to remember that organization, excuse me, love it when you get hiccups in the middle of a presentation, but organizations like Cooperative Extension, in which volunteer development is recognized as a profession, many states across the country have volunteer specialists, but that is that's a significant benefit to our volunteer involvement. You know, my goal is to someday get a volunteer manager or volunteer specialist in Nevada. You know, can't guarantee when that'll be, but eventually I'd like to get one. Also, we need to remember that contemporary research identifies those competencies, and the capacities that are needed by a volunteer program to be efficient and effective. And those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, so you guys have an idea about what those are. And then also, if you participated in the first session of the orientation, I talked about the 4-H PRKC, the Professional Research Knowledge and Competencies. There is a volunteerism domain within that document, and that is really a key resource for us to remember in the preparation and the training of the professional staff in volunteer management. And so a lot of this information has been taken from the PRKC, and as soon as the new model is rolled out, which will be in the end of February, I am going to be sharing that with everybody. We're putting together some self-assessments, and everybody will be getting those self-assessments to see where needs are for training, additional training within our state. Okay. So the 4 pieces that I want to share with you today is something that's called the ISOCHR model. And I'll explain what that's an acronym, and then the National 4-H Learning Priorities, the VRKC, which is Volunteer Research Knowledge and Competencies. And then I'm going to share with you the National 4-H website, and then also I said I was going to share with you that national framework. And so there's some stuff in there about the framework as well. But I want to share with you the National 4H.org has got some great resources around volunteer development. So the ISOCHR model. So what that means is identify, select, orientation, training, utilization, recognition, and the evaluation of volunteers. So when you talk about the I, or identification, that means it's really important that we have a job description for our volunteers. I know right now we don't have a lot of examples that are on our state website. Eventually, that's something that I would really like to enhance and to create or to borrow from another state and adapt for our state. But I think it's really important as a person who has limited time, but I still like to volunteer within our community. I want to know what I'm getting into. So things like a title, it should include a general description or a purpose and benefits. There should be what skills are required, specific responsibilities, expected results, the resources that are available to them, who's supervising them, the location of their volunteer, and then how long of a time commitment is it. I know last time when I talked about risk management, I said, you know, if a volunteer is working within the scope of their program or of their job description, then, you know, the university is going to protect that as far as liability. And that's why it's really important that we do have some of these pieces pulled together. Then you have your selection. And so I think what's really important is, and we tend to think that we just need to take everybody that applies to be a volunteer within our organization. And that is not the case. We have to select the best qualified or the best individual for that volunteer opportunity. You know, there really is a lot of stiff competition for volunteers, and so you have to figure out how you're going to recruit volunteers and ask. But then just because you're asking someone or a group, you know, you're putting out a call for volunteers, doesn't mean that every single person that comes to your door you have to pick or you have to take it as a volunteer. Some people, it's just not the right fit. And so you have to really look at that. The key to the recruitment efforts, you have to ask, but you also need to know what you want before you go out and ask individuals to volunteer. And then you need to look at you need to work with potential volunteers to see if they have the skills and interests needed to do a job. And the selection process, so there is correct screening processes in place that are on, if you look on our website under the policies and procedures tab, there is a section on volunteerism, and those are on there. Also, I think one of the critical pieces as a new staff person is if you have any questions about how to go about running those volunteer screening process, because it's an application and the fingerprinting and a variety of things, I think that's, make sure you call the people. You need to call, if you're in the northern area, call Stephanie in the Washoe office. Stephanie has got that process down. In fact, most of the time when I have a question, I will call Stephanie and ask her that question. Or if you're in the southern area, call Paul Lessick, and Paul has it down too for the southern area. We are in the process of trying to pull together some pieces so we have more consistency statewide. Again, like everything else, it just takes time and more bodies. So, but I know Paul and Stephanie and I have started having some conversations. But please, if you have those questions, do not hesitate to call one of those two individuals. So then we go into the O, or orientation. And this is where you're familiarizing the volunteer with not only the overall extension and overall 4-H, but also what specific job that they might be doing. And this really helps establish a positive environment for a volunteer. I'm hoping that these orientation sessions for you as new staff, I know we have some staff that have been on a while, and I get excited when we have staff participate. I'm hoping it does provide you with an opportunity, with that positive environment and positive, something that you can look back on. But I think you can do orientations in several ways. You can do a general session or a meeting. You could do one-on-one orientation, or you could do self-directed or take-home lessons. I know some examples. When I was in the county, I would do quarterly new leader orientations. So, every 3 months I would, any new leaders would come and we'd do a couple hours of orientation. I think that worked okay. The biggest problem we had is if we had a couple of volunteers that maybe had been, around for a while and didn't, or been around for a couple of months, they might have gotten started. So those are some things that we need to think about. And then, or you could do, when you get a group of 5, you could do an orientation. The other piece, the one-on-one orientation, I've done that as well, where, if you've got somebody new, you just have them come in the office. And if you've got a volunteer handbook, some counties have volunteer handbooks, you can go over the volunteer handbook with them, or you can just talk to them, help answer questions. The other piece is self-directed or take-home lessons. That is where and I'm going to, I think I have this. I'm going to stop sharing this for just a second. And I'm going to see really quick if I have it saved. Yes. Okay, so the document I'm going to share with you guys right now is the Idaho document, but it is on our website that you can find this. So this document is e-learning for volunteers. I know we have several counties, as I'm looking at this, Carson and Story County require this of their volunteers. Washoe, I believe, requires this of their volunteers, as well as Elko. And there are a few others, but there are 4 modules that they go online. It's a self-guided self-guided study. They go through a module. I think they read the module and then they have a quiz that they take, or the module reads to them. Sorry, it's been a little while. And then they take a quiz. When they complete the quiz and they get a certain score, then it will tell them, yes, you passed. I get an email from Washington State, who is the one right now that's hosting our site for these modules. It will tell me who's completed, and then what I try to do is about every two to 3 months, I try to pull together that list and then send an email to the counties letting them know. I know the other day, Bianca emailed me and said, hey, is this person completed? And I just had to go into the system and look and see. So these are being revised right now, I will tell you that. They were supposed to go away in, I think, October, but we've got a reprieve because the new modules are not done yet. When the new modules are done, it's a real possibility that we may make those statewide required for all of our volunteers to complete, or as many as can complete them if they have internet access. But just so you know, everybody is aware that those are, and they are on the website. I will, when I send out the link to this recording and all of the handouts, I will share with you the link on our website where those are. But I think they're really good. We always get really positive responses from those. And then we have training. So this is, and those are a good orientation. And again, the new modules are being put together. Oh, this was still available through our website. Yes, Sharon, they are still available. I need to make sure that the link and everything is still working, but if not, I've got the link otherwise that we can share. The new modules are going to be more interactive. They're going to be there's the slightly different, the topics are similar but slightly different content. We're hoping to have those done. Those are going to actually, from my understanding, we are going to have those offered through e-extension as well as 4-H online. So as a volunteer goes in and enrolls for the year, they will complete those modules. So there's a variety of ways. We're trying to make it so they're available in 2 or 3 different ways. So training, assisting volunteers in developing their additional knowledge. This is where we want to continue their training. It can be not just, there used to be a state leaders forum, which, I hope in the future we can bring state leaders forum back. There's also, I know last year, the southern area did a volunteer training, or did a mini forum type deal, a 1-day training in Logandale. I think, Stormy, did you go to that? I think you were there, weren't you, for that day? Maybe not. Maybe it was Lisa. But, that was one that, okay, not you. Okay, so it must have been Lisa that was there. But, and that's something I think that they may be looking at doing again. That's something if the northern area, or if just a couple of counties want to get together and do leaders training, that you could do that. You could do 2 or 3 different speakers during the day. I know we tried to break it up and have a couple of different things for those sessions. You can do pre-job training. So again, that's kind of that orientation. On-the-job training where they're doing it while they're working. So, we all know that we get on-the-job training on a regular basis in our jobs. Well, volunteers, the same thing happens with them. And then that's that continuing education. And that's what we want to try to offer to our volunteers as much as possible. Another good example, I'm going to share with you the VRKC and lesson plans that go along with that towards the end of this. But a great thing, if you have leaders councils or volunteer councils, then, and I just saw your question, Molly, and I'll get back to it, but the that's a great time. You could take 15 minutes or a half an hour at Leaders Council meetings to do a training. The lesson plans are already created. I think they're great pieces to use. And so just so that'll be a good resource. And Molly, eventually I'd love to have a statewide volunteer handbook, but, and it's on my to-do list, but I can't guarantee that it's going to get done, when it would get done. I think right now we need to get our policies and procedures in order. So, but eventually, we'd like to do that. Okay, so last night they did, Molly, they did a defensive driving training for all of the leaders in Lyon County. That's a great example. That's a great training. There's going to be some other trainings within this VRKC that are some soft skills as well that I think will be great to do with leaders. But I think giving them that 15 minutes to 30 minutes of training at those meetings, you tend to get people that will attend if they know that they're going to get some training, and they're also going to get and they're going to enjoy it more. And then we have our utilization. I think that's another key, is putting our volunteers to work. And I have been guilty of this in the past. I know I had, my very first job, I had a couple of people come in and want to volunteer for the program. We got them through the selection process. They were certified volunteers, but they didn't have a club, and I really didn't know what to do with them. And so I did not utilize them to the best of my ability. And, I really, and they just kind of faded away after about a year or two. And that makes me sad now, because I know that they would have been outstanding volunteers now that I've begun, and now that I've been doing this for a while. So I think it's important that we try to utilize people that want to volunteer with us if it's the right fit. Utilization also means putting the right person in the right job with the right preparation. We're not going to put, that's one of the reasons why in shooting sports we require that extra training for the liability and the risk management, but also we want to make sure that the right people are doing that job. I sent a person to a national training for shooting sports to get certified in a discipline. They came back, and I had a call from the instructors at the national level, and they told me, you know what, I don't think that person that was not the right fit for that discipline for them. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, but don't let them do training without some help. And so, it was, again, it was me not knowing that those individuals as well as I should have. But I think that, it's putting the right person in the right job. And then delegating, providing them authority and the guidance to do the job. I think sometimes as staff, and I do it too, just as bad, we don't necessarily delegate what we want, or, delegate all of our jobs. And follow up, making sure there's regular training and that you update and give them and work with them. And then communication, that it's ongoing and that you're getting two-way communication. And then we also, it's supervising our volunteers. Good supervisors of volunteers, and sometimes this is tough. We know what motivates those volunteers. We know, so all of us have had the experience of the Leaders Council or some kind of meeting where that is the volunteers' social time. They are highly social people. We are all in this job because most of us are pretty social people. I mean, we work with individuals on a day-to-day basis, and our volunteers are there because they typically like people, I hope, but we don't want to put volunteer with high social needs in an isolated situation. You want to put them in a situation, and you don't want to put them in those with high social needs. You also don't want to put them in an isolation, or put them in a job where they need to keep moving and keep getting stuff done when they want to stop and talk to people. And so you have to think about those things. You also, you have those volunteers that want recognition. There are still volunteers that want a plaque. that says they are a 40-year volunteer and they want to stand up in front of the group and get their plaque, and they want their picture in the paper, and they want, all of those things. And so we need to be aware of that and make sure that those volunteers are getting that kind of recognition if they deserve it. And then also those volunteers that want to be in front of a group, give them that opportunity. Your achievement nights, I know most of your counties are doing achievement nights, and this is, for plaques, it just depends on the county. Some counties use their Leaders Council buy plaques, or they get sponsors for those, or it doesn't have to be a plaque. It can be a t-shirt, or it can be whatever. So it's just kind of counties just figure out what they want to give. And then you have those groups, achievement nights. You have some volunteers that want to get in front of the group and talk. So you give them some kind of role in your achievement night, whether they just read the Clover Bud, the Clover Buds for the year, and if the Clover Buds get those awards. And we always need to remember that volunteers can leave. Number one, they can leave by their own choice, or they can leave by our choice. But we just need to, as volunteer managers, we need to kind of think about what our volunteers want and try to meet their needs. And recognition. So recognizing volunteers is really an important part of our organization, and a component to volunteer management. You can do formal recognition or informal recognition, or intangible. Probably a lot of individuals, the thing that they like the most is a handwritten thank you note. And so whether that comes from kids or whether that comes from you, it doesn't, I think just taking a couple of minutes, and I know I am horrible I used to be so much better at that than I am now. I think it's really important. I love getting handwritten thank you notes, somebody, and it doesn't have to be for something really, like that I did, it's just, or something that somebody did. It could just be, thank you so much for spending your time with the kids, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's important. Or it could just be going up and saying thank you to a volunteer. I think as staff members, hopefully you've had volunteers say thank you to you, recognize the amount of time and the effort that you put into the program, and say thank you. And we need to remember to do the same thing for our volunteers. The other thing is recognition should be ongoing. It shouldn't be just once a year at the awards dinner or our achievement night. We should be trying to recognize our volunteers on a regular basis. I don't know how many of you are aware of April. I think it's the third week of April is National Volunteer Week. And so, what I used to do that week is I would find some inexpensive little gift. One year it was a little packet of seeds, and I would put a little sticker on it that said, there's all those sayings, with seeds and stuff. And I would send it to all of the volunteers. Just, it's nothing major. It cost me probably less than $50 to do. But it was something that I felt was important. And so it's just continuing to, trying to do those handwritten thank you notes, those thank yous, just a personal thank you on a regular basis. And then volunteers who are recognized for their contributions are more likely to stay with the organization. I think that's another important piece to remember is when we say thank you and we give those quick little, piece recognition, they're more apt to stay. And then we have evaluation. And this is one that we tend to not think about, but it's really important that our volunteers have the opportunity to have an evaluation. And so, it's that individual performance and the effectiveness of the total program. Excuse me. And so I think it doesn't have to be formal, but something, just a simple evaluation. We always talk about, we get evaluated as professionals, but I don't think it hurts our volunteers to have a quick evaluation. And so it's just giving them feedback on the quality of their work, and it needs to be a two-way effort. And so you have a chance to evaluate the volunteer. And then also, there might be an opportunity, and this would be something that you would want to, you could implement. Your supervisor would have to work with you, but evaluating the manager, the paid staff, and the program. When I was in the first county I worked in, we used to do a program evaluation of our county program, and we would bring our volunteers in to go through this a process to do that. And we'd look at what projects we're offering, what the quality of the program, etc. And I think it gives them a voice. Now, the key I always say with that is they can be a piece of the evaluation, but they should not be allowed to completely 100% be the evaluation of a staff person. But maybe they have, maybe they can send in comments. And then, so that talks about the isochur model. Are there any questions about the isochur model? And I have a handout that I'll be sending to you on this as well that gives a little bit more information. Okay, everybody's quiet. So the next thing I want to talk about is the National 4-H Learning Priority. I think it was in about 2010 now, they created a lot of learning groups. And one of them was volunteerism for the next generation. So what this was really it's for you as a professional. It's not for our volunteers. It's for our professionals to really look at how do we create, maintain an effective local volunteer delivery system. It talks about both volunteer development and volunteer management. It's a rubric and a syllabus. So I'm going to show it to you. But what it does is, so the rubric is, here's the skills that you should have essentially, and it's all based on the PRKC. And then here are some resources, or the syllabus. Here's some learning that you can do. So the topics and components, basically, developing and implementing an infrastructure to support a volunteer system, your personal readiness, organizational readiness, the engagement of volunteers, the education of volunteers, sustainability of volunteer efforts, and then the review and analyzation, basically, of volunteer delivery system. And then in the rubric, it includes a self-assessment, it includes resources, learning activities, and reading activities. And it's broke down into novice, practitioner, and expert levels. So I'm going to pull that up. I just have to find where I put it. Okay, maybe I don't. Let me look. I know I've got it. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen back again. Okay, so this is the learning priorities, and I'm going to share this with you as well. So you can see it, there's a table of contents, and then the rubric courses. So I'm going fast through this. I'm not gonna worry about this part right now. But what I want to take you to is kind of the rubric of what it looks like. Okay, so this is a self-assessment. So the number one topic is developing and implementing an infrastructure. So if you're a novice, so this is your self-assessment in that area. And if you're a novice, you're professional at the level of awareness and understand the concepts of practice. So you have a knowledge and a skill development. If If you're a practitioner, you engage in the application of those concepts and best practices. So you apply those principles. And then if you're an expert, you are actually out, number one, teaching, and then also engaging in those. So you would go based on these. You would pick which one you are, where you feel you're at, and then from here, then it goes. So you do your self-assessment, and then it talks about, okay, here's an overview. Here are some resources for you. There's some books, there are journal articles, a variety of things. And then here is, if you're at the novice level and you want to learn more about how to define volunteerism and how it's critical to our 4-H youth development program, then they suggest that you get the volunteer management handbook and read that. Or you could get the book From the Top Down, The Executive Role in Volunteer Program Success. So you can see, so it does give you a variety of learning opportunities. Now, this is something that isn't used as often anymore, but I do want to share it with you because it is still available. But like I said, this is based on the PRKC that's currently the 2004 version, and that will be revised and updated, and we are creating a new self-assessment for that. The main thing I want to talk about is, the main thing I really want to get into now is talking about the VRKC, because this is where I think this to me is a huge resource for you as you're looking at what kind of training can I do for our volunteers. So it's volunteer research, knowledge, and competencies. So I want to talk a little bit about, those are not the right, okay, well, okay. So it didn't save the right PowerPoint, but there are six domains, yes. So like in the PRKC, there are 6 domains, and within those, it's communications, organization, 4-H program management, educational design and delivery, positive youth development, and interpersonal characteristics. And so within I've just got the last 2 on here, but communications is the volunteer demonstrates and the ability to create, deliver, and interpret information effectively through formal and non-formal means. So there's actually lesson plans in this that you can use to teach volunteers about speaking skills, listening skills, writing skills, nonverbal skills, information delivery and dissemination, marketing and public relations, and then the use of technology. There's also organization. So that's volunteers demonstrate the ability to engage others in the planning, providing, and delivering positive youth development programming in a community. And those are things like planning and organizing, time management, parent recruitment and involvement, delegating tasks to parents, service to the community, and then again, public marketing and publicity. And then you have 4-H program management. That's where volunteers understand and follow the appropriate policies, procedures, and safety guidelines when acting on behalf of Extension. So organization and structure of Extension. And that's one place where you could take that lesson and then also take some of those PowerPoints that I shared in the first orientation session. You could share those with the volunteers as well. Upholding the 4-H mission, risk management, risk reduction, liability awareness and reduction, club management, behavior management, record keeping, financial management, and computer skills. Then there's educational design and delivery, and those are volunteers demonstrate the ability to plan, implement, evaluate, and research-based learning opportunities that effectively promote positive youth development. And so those are things like use of age-appropriate activities and utilization of multiple teaching strategies, understanding the differences in learning styles, knowledge of subject matter, team building skills, application of experiential learning model, and then program evaluation methods. And then the last two you can see here are the positive youth development. So they demonstrate the ability to intentionally and appropriately use or apply the principles and best practices that result in positive youth development. So things like understanding life skills, leadership, understanding ages and stages. I'm going to let you read those two. You've probably already read them all, but you can see those. So I'm going to share with you, I've got an example of one that I want to share. Let me pull it up first before I... Okay, so this is a, sorry, okay, there we go. Share my screen. Okay, so this is an example of one of the lesson plans. This is just introducing volunteers to what this is, and it helps them to understand what the VRKC is and why it's important. So it gives you the introduction, and all of these come with PowerPoints, and so it tells you which slides to use. I mean, what I love is it tells you exactly what you need, and that's why these are so critical. Here's what you do. So, you know, this is a lesson that's going to take 20 to 30 minutes. You're going to have handouts, and here's the supplies that you need. So here's the first activity that you would do. You provide each with a piece of flip chart paper. So each small group with a piece of flip chart paper, have them brainstorm a list of skills and competencies they need in their volunteer roles. Have them share, and then have them look at as a whole what those skills are. Gives you what questions to ask. Again, it talks about the PowerPoint slides. Now, I will tell you, like, okay, so when I'm looking at this, it says, you know, this research was led by blah, blah, blah. I don't think you necessarily need to tell our volunteers who the authors were, but, you know, if you wanted to, you could. And then it just step by step tells you exactly what you need to do with each section. And then it also has so we had our do, this is our reflect, and this is our apply. It also gives you a short evaluation tool, and then here's ways that you can enhance this program, or you could simplify this program. So, and then this would be your first handout. So you would give this to them at the end, and then you would, and then this is a short evaluation that they give for that training. And so they're all designed like this. And let me look to see. Actually, I do. I'm going to stop sharing this really quick and just to make sure. Okay, so this is the website, and I'm just going to go to the lesson plan because I also want to show you. So when I said it has the speaking lesson plan, so hopefully, can everybody see? Okay. Can everybody see this? This is the lesson plan on speaking skills. So this is going to give them an idea of recognizing their own personal way of communicating and give them hopefully some skills in speaking. And then also to give them so they can contribute to the shared pool of understanding. So again, it gives you everything. It tells you what you need to say, what your activity. It gives you role playing. This one has role playing involved. Gives you the reflection, what you can do, to enhance it or to simplify it. Here's your handout. Sorry, I'm going through this really quick, but here's your role playing. I think those are good ones. And these are all, very relevant. You have a 4-H member that missed a deadline again. So what are you going to do? A leader does not fulfill a responsibility. A parent yells at another parent. All of these are great examples. And then it gives you an evaluation. So you can find out what you're doing, how it worked. And then, okay, is it back? I can't tell. Is it back on the where it says speaking skills lesson plan on the website? Okay, thank you, Jay. I just can't tell exactly if it flips back, but I'll show you the PowerPoint example. So here's the PowerPoint. 7 slides is all it is. And you can download this. They come as a PDF, so you can download it. But here's your PowerPoint. It's all here. It is, to me, like I said, these to me are some of the best resources and some of the most unknown resources that we have in volunteer management. And so, I always want to make sure that people have, that people know about them. And so here's the website. I will tell you, if you have not gone on to 4h.org, and when you go into download a lot of their resources anymore, I don't know why it is, but it is. You have to put in a username and password. And so, just be aware that you may have to create a username and password. Okay, so the National Framework on Volunteerism, and what this document really is about is just looking at what is the purpose. It's so we can have a more unified idea of what volunteerism should look like across the country. And I'll be honest with you, I did not know this document existed until probably, when I started in this role, because I didn't do volunteer management, but I think that, and it was created in 2008. So, but it's still very, very relevant. So some of the core elements is the creating safe environments. It's really important that our volunteers, through training and experience, create that safe environment both for themselves and for the youth program participants. And then it also gives some examples within that document about the training, and the screening and training is consistent, that we have some of those core orientation concepts. One of the things that we do have a adult volunteerism statewide committee that's that they haven't started working yet, because we've been kind of holding off seeing what was happening with those orientation modules that are coming out. But we did, they're going to be putting together, here's some core things. These are essential that every county teaches in the state of Nevada. So just be aware, but they've got some examples of activities within that. And we have engaging volunteers, again, that they're responsive to the contemporary challenges and the attributes of today's volunteers. So we understand what I talked about in the beginning with what volunteers look like today, that we're responsive to their needs. I think we probably see more and more of that in our urban areas, but I'm seeing it in our rural areas too. Parents are not willing to volunteer, and people are not willing to come in and volunteer. Yes, I will sign up to be a volunteer, 4-H volunteer, and I guess I'm in it for life. If we can get them for 6 weeks, we've done a really good job. If we can get somebody to come in and do a 6-week program for us, then, but we've got to be aware that, our 4-H volunteers is not like it was even 10 years ago, where we're going to have volunteers come in and they're going to be there for the rest of their life. We also have our administering volunteer management systems. And so this is where, we can, that our extension staff members, our 4-H professionals, administer effective programs, and that we successfully engage a diverse audience of volunteers. And so it gives, like I said, it also gives some examples. One of the things it talks about is developing and expanding the local delivery system. And one of the things that we forget about, and this is currently happening right now in one of our rural communities, Boys and Girls Club came to 4-H and said, hey, you guys have got some really good curriculum, some really good resources. We have the manpower. Let's join forces and deliver programs. And so, looking at ways, they're still volunteers. Teachers are still volunteers. Even though teachers are paid within our organization, they are still volunteers if they are using our materials in their classroom. It's also the benefits of volunteering. We need to understand that, they can, personally, they're going to gain from their involvement in accomplishing the 4-H program. Things like, and then also because they're going to benefit because, you're giving them training on the VRKC, you're taking some of those VRKC models and you're going to give them. Another good system that we don't talk about a lot anymore in 4-H, and I think we need to, is the middle manager system. So you are the extension professional, and then you maybe have middle managers who work with other volunteers. There's some great examples of some pilot testing that's going on around the country. An example is a new family coordinator. So that would be a volunteer, a volunteer that's been around for a while, and they are working with, they work with you as a staff person, and they help to when a new family comes into 4-H, because how many times do we lose new families because they don't know our lingo and they don't know the rules, and they just, because 4-H is so ingrained in so many of us, we forget. And so you would have somebody that could be that link with them. They can help answer questions. They can, for those new families, they're making sure that the new families understand, that you need to enroll by this date in order to show at the fair. Or, just a variety of things. And so that's one example of a middle manager. That has been very successful. In fact, I believe that might be the program, I need to go and look, that won the National Volunteerism Award this year at the 4-H Agents Association meeting. So, so there's some examples of those types of pieces that I think are critical. And then also strengthening our partnerships. That's where we are engaging our volunteers to meet the needs and interests, and that we're really focusing on that positive image of 4-H. And so that's being involved in advisory systems, the active participation in our professional associations, our professional organizations are really, that's an important part, I think, of being a 4-H professional. And I'll talk about some of that in some of the later sessions about what are some of our opportunities for as professionals, how can we learn about volunteerism. I know in April, I believe it is, there is the National Extension Conference on Volunteerism. If your county has the ability to send you to that conference, I highly recommend it. They hold it every 2 to 3 years. I think it's every 2 years now. It might be every 3 years. I can't remember. If you're not able to go this coming year, I would highly suggest that you think about going the next time it comes around. It is, I've not gone, but I have heard fantastic things about it. Everybody I know that has attended has loved it, and they get so much information from it. And so there are a ton of resources. I showed you that website. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the national website. Okay, and I'm going to show you a little bit about. Okay, so are you guys seeing the national website? Okay, thanks, Jay. You're taking care of me. So from that, okay, if you look, this is 4h.org. You can, if you go to the 4-H professionals page, and then there's curriculum development, marketing resources, is this professional and volunteer development is the page that you want to go to. And then you look under the volunteer development. So you have an overview. These are great pieces. They've got all kinds of toolkits for you. Everyone Ready, this is a program that was available many years ago. Now, there are some still really good resources. If you're looking at just trying to learn more about volunteerism, please, go to this page and look at, you can see all the different topics. What it was they got a grant. I can't even remember who the grant was from, and it was a 3-year program. So it was every month they would have either a webinar or they would have a self-study lesson, and you could participate. And so these are all of those resources that you could do. There are fact sheets. Again, this is where the isoture model is in there. The PRKC volunteerism domain, some of the volunteer delivery systems. This one, Let's Measure Up, it's a criteria for evaluating a 4-H program. I actually downloaded this, and I'm going to be sharing, I'll send it with, or I'll put it in the documents that I'll share. I think it's a good one to look at. There's things about personal readiness. I can't even, this is something you just need to go through and research. And then the VRKC, all of your lesson plans are there, depending on the domain. So everything is there. And then the other thing that I will let you know is in 2017, they're going to be doing the fall of 2017 is an e-forum. I don't know if many of you were not around in 2015 when they did, the Western region holds a volunteer forum every year. And in 2015, it was decided that the Western region would be an e-forum. So I think it was 3 months in a row, one night a month, they did a session. And so they're looking at doing this, but on a national level. And it looks like they're going to do 3 90-minute sessions. I don't know what the details are or what the topics are or anything. I just know they're planning on doing that. That can be done several different ways. I'm not sure what they're setting up. A lot of counties, what happened last time was the county office would host that meeting. And so everybody would come to the county office. You would have your computer hooked up to a projector, you'd show it up on the screen and people would watch and participate, and then as questions came up, you would be the local facilitator in that county, and so you would help facilitate that. That gets your highly social people, that gives them their opportunity to participate. You could also offer that, and then you could also offer it as, here's the link. So people, you've got some individuals that don't want to leave their home, or maybe they can't leave their home. And this would give them that chance to participate without, and getting that training. So just know that that is coming. Like I said, I don't know much more about it than it is coming. I think it's going to be good. I just don't know, as I get more information, I'll share it with everybody. So I'm going to make the suggestion that everybody goes to that page and really tries to just navigate through it. Like I said, there's a lot of information on it with things that can make a difference. In the PowerPoint slide, I do have the link to that website. So, if you don't want to try to figure out how to go there, you can just go right to the website that I provide. So, any questions about volunteer management, volunteer development? Everybody's quiet. Okay. Molly has a question about record books. There are no state level record books. I will tell you that. But no, go ahead and ask the question about record books. We've got some time. Oh, that was your question. Yeah, no. At this point, I don't know. There is not a statewide record book. Before I came on board, there was a committee that had been meeting to try to come up with one, but I don't think they moved very far. So, but if you've got a question about one that you would like to use, I have no idea who was on. I couldn't even tell you. I don't know who was on that committee, honestly. I think most of the people that were on that committee might be gone now too, actually. But I would suggest, ask me if I know of any resources for a project, because I would rather than having something created, that maybe I'd like us to look and see what's already out there for projects, because there's a lot of projects. So, okay, yeah, one thought about providing thank yous to volunteers. You may want to ask the community for little gifts. Yeah. That's great. Last night at the awards banquet, the coffee shop, yeah, the free coffee tokens for all the volunteers. And honestly, you could probably get a lot of that, and they love it. And for that coffee shop, if they gave you 20, probably 10 of them will be used. And so we have to, so really, a lot of businesses are willing to do that. Or if you can get donations, I think the free coffee tokens are a great idea. Yeah, you usually don't ask in. Yep, exactly. Try to think outside of the box of things that we don't normally ask for. And I always think businesses are more apt to give you stuff than money a lot of times, like a little gift certificate or something. I know, if you've got a yogurt shop in town, that's a great little gift too. A lot of businesses will give you a yogurt, give you a card for free yogurt. And what you could do, if you can't get enough for every volunteer, if you can get multiple businesses to give you 2 or 3 items, then maybe then you could do a drawing. Make sure that there's enough for every volunteer to get something, but then you do a drawing, and so so everybody gets something. Any other thoughts on recognition of volunteers? I know Clark County just did their achievement night, and they were able to get sweatshirts donated or at a reasonable price. And so all the volunteers got sweatshirts. That works great in counties that you have small numbers too, but I think, but I love the little items too. And volunteers love it. I love it. I get excited when, I had a dean of a college one time that I worked with, and up until I moved to Nevada, I still got, and she retired, I got a birthday card from her with a little token. Maybe it was a pencil, or maybe it was, something. I got the wrap for your luggage handle, that was bright, in India shoe colors. She would send that just as a thank you for, even though I wasn't even working for her, and I had graduated as a student, but just a thank you for all the years that I had worked there, and that I had been a student and worked with them. So, and I was like, wow, or maybe a little notepad or something. Right. Any other questions? You guys are going to be done early today. All right. Well, I will